Let's examine what the utility functions look like now as we go through the actions that are involved with managing these various data sets. From the primary menu, we can select option 3 to take us to our utility screen. And on our utility screen, again, we can see the various capabilities that exist. And as we've just discussed, the first 5 options where we're dealing with partition data sets themselves for sequential files and moving them back and forth, as well as the ISPF reset statistics are all available on this particular screen. If I select option 1, then I will go into the library function or the partition data sets. Now, just to refresh your memory regarding partition data sets, a partition data set is where we have a particular file that has members in it that can be individually processed. So in this case here, we have a data set name that we can see here under project, group, and type. Now in ISPF, even though this does not look like a normal data set structure, the project represents the high level qualifier, the group represents the middle level qualifier, and the type represents the lowest level qualifier for this data set. So in other words, this data set name here would be odyga.jcl.cntl. That would be the fully qualified data set name for use within ZOS. So by specifying it here, ISPF will store this in the profile so that whenever I log on, this will be my default library setting. In addition, I can move my cursor down to the name column, and on this row here, I can go ahead and I can specify another data set name that I want to work on, which will override the default value of the project group and type. In this case here, I will just leave it at the project group and type, and when I hit enter, you can see all of the members that exist within this data set. So in this case now, what I can do is that I can come through here and I can perform an action like a rename, for example. And once I do a rename, then I can specify the new name that I want. And so in this case, I can just specify that name. And now you can see that the entry has been renamed. If I want to see the update, I can simply type in a refresh on the command line, which will then refresh the listing so that I get the latest information. In addition, I can perform other actions like deleting entries, and performing these type of functions where I can go through and I can take a look at them. For example, if I want to view, I can now view the particular member within this data set. And similarly, I can come through here and I can edit. So these basic capabilities allow me to operate on partition data sets. That's the nature of what the 3.1 utility function is all about. In addition, one of the things that I can do then is using option 2, I can go and I can create new data sets. I can get information about existing data sets, but I could also create new ones. And in the case of option 2, this is where we would specify the name of what we want to create, or we can look at the information for what already exists. In this particular case, again, you can see that the project group and type has already been specified as the default. So if I simply hit enter, then I get the information back indicating what the characteristics of this data set are. I can see where it's located, and I can see the other attributes regarding this particular file. If I wish to create a new data set, then all I need to do is indicate that I want to allocate a new data set and then provide a name for that data set. So in this case here, if I simply type in a new name, then I will create this data set and be prompted for whatever values I would like to have. So in this case here, again, we have the attributes that were associated with the last data set that I displayed. So these values that are already filled in are filled in based on the last item that I had displayed. So what I need to do is I can go through here then, and if I want to retain any of them, then I can keep those values. Otherwise, I can go ahead and clear these values. Now, with respect to these items that are associated with management class, storage class, and data class, in general, we should leave those blank unless we have installation standards that require something, because these will be established normally by default based on storage administration policies. So if we specify nothing here, then that means the installation standards will provide the values necessary. The volume serial number also is something that is normally not specified, simply so that based on storage administration policy, when we create a new data set, it can be placed on the volume that is designated to contain those particular types of data sets. Now, the types of data sets that we're referring to here could be anything ranging from a temporary data set that you wish to use. It could be a personal data set for your TSO user ID. It could be a production data set or even a data set for a vendor product. Each may have different criteria determining where it's going to be allocated based on storage administration policy. So that's what we're attempting to deal with here by leaving these items blank. So the criteria is primarily on the use of the data set and the qualifying name that is going to be used that determines where it will be located. The space allocation in this case can be done in blocks of data. It can be done as tracks or cylinders as physical units of allocation, or it can be done in terms of kilobytes, megabytes, bytes, or number of records. If it's any of the latter, then we can specify in the average record unit what the unit should be, megabytes, K, or undefined. And then the primary quantity then is going to be how much space we want to allocate. The secondary is the growth increment that we want to allow for this particular data set. That way, if the data set fills up, then we can gather up to 15 additional extents of secondary space to allow for growth. The directory blocks requires a number if we are allocating a partition data set, and the partition data set, as we'd mentioned previously, is that you can estimate about one directory block will hold 5 member definitions. The record format will indicate whether it's a fixed file, fixed block, variable, variable blocked, or undefined. The record length would be any logical record length that is associated with the file definition. The block size should be specified as 0 so that we can let the system calculate the block size unless we have a specific value that we want. And then the other is that we can indicate the data set type. And in this case, if I wanted to make this a sequential file, then I can simply blank this out and make it a sequential file. If I specified library, it would be a PDSE, or I could specify PDS in order to create a traditional partition data set. The only thing remaining is to clear out the other information that is not relevant. In this case, the data set version should be blank and the number of generations should be blank. And so when I hit the enter key now, I get a message in the upper right-hand corner now saying that this data set has been allocated. If I hit enter again, I can see the data set that's been allocated and I can see all the attributes that have been assigned. We can also see the system calculated block size that was put in here, and we can see the volume serial number and the device type as well as what's been assigned to this particular data set.